Hello, and welcome to another episode of Rights for Women. I've just had the most amazing chat with Tess Woods, author of The Venice Hotel. That's Tess's latest book. I'm just holding it up here. If you are on video, you will see that. If not, you may have seen that around the place. It came out towards the end of last year and was just an absolutely huge seller for Tess. And I have been wanting to talk to Tess about this book for quite some time. And today we've just had the best chat about characterization, about setting. George Clooney features in the chat, some of the ups and downs of the writing life. And there is a special little bit at the end, which is saved particularly for our Substack subscribers, paid Substack subscribers. That's a mouthful. So if you are a paid Substacker, you'll love the extra bit that we get today with Tess Woods. Before we got on to telling you about Tess, personal writing news, I have finished my novella, sent that off to my editor and my publisher at HarperCollins for the Christmas anthology, and have had feedback back already within a week. So that's been great. Luckily, no major changes, just some tweaking that I have to do. So I'll be working on that this week. If you didn't see on Instagram, one thing I wanted to let you know is that I am taking people now in for day attendance at my upcoming writing retreat from the 10th to the 13th of April. So this is in Currajong at the foothills of the Blue Mountains. It's not very far out of Sydney. It's only an hour or so drive out of Sydney. So if you would like to come, but you can't come for the whole retreat, and numbers have been limited for this retreat now, there is one spot available. You would actually be sharing with yours truly. So if you would like to join us for the whole of the retreat, you can email Pamela at pamelacook.com.au and I can give you the information on how to book that. Would love to fill that last spot. Potentially 2 spots, just depending on whether people are happy to share or not. So would love to fill that. And you can also come as a day attendee. Now, I have got up on my website, if you go to the courses on my website, pamelacook.com.au, click on the retreat. There is a section there, if you scroll down, which will tell you what we are covering on each day in the workshops and how you can go about booking for each of those days. So you can either come for Friday or you can come for the Saturday or you can come for the sun. Have a look at that if you think, yeah, that's something that I'd really like to do, particularly if there's a certain aspect of your writing that you'd want to cover. So Friday, for instance, we're looking at opening strong. So if that's something that you're really interested in, we are also looking at characterization and driving your narrative, how to get emotion into your plot, how to get tension, how to write in scenes and how to revise and how to write blurbs and synopses. So all those things are covered over the course of the weekend. It would be great to have a few people come along just as day trippers and join us. I'm calling it a retreat yourself. So definitely would be happy for you to join us as part of that from the 10th to the 13th of April. So head to pamelacook.com.au for more information or email me and I'll put all the information in the show notes for this podcast. Now to tell you a little bit about our guest today, who is Tess Woods. Tess is just a stalwart of the Australian writing community. I met Tess some years ago now at the West Coast Fiction Festival, which she organised back in, I think it might have been 2017. I can't really remember. It might have been earlier. She's now organising another festival for later in this year that she's become involved with, and they had a great success with that last year. But let me tell you a little bit about Tess's background. So, Tess once had a simple life until her compulsion to write made up stories complicated everything. Now, Tess has been on the podcast previously and she talks about that compulsion and how that resulted in her first book in that. So, I'll also put a link to that interview in the show notes. She's now an award winning and best selling author of contemporary fiction. Her novels have been published across North America and sold into Europe for translation. Her latest novel, The Venice Hotel, was released with Penguin Random House in Australia in September 2024 and became an instant top 10 Australian bestseller in its debut week. Just has done amazingly well. It's due for release in Europe with Penguin Random House Germany in September 2025 after a hotly contested bidding war at the London Book Fair. So there was a bidding war for the German translation rights. That's how amazing this book is, how successful it is becoming. Tess also works as a physiotherapist in private practice, and she shares a clinic and a home on the stunning Western Australian coast with her lovely and long-suffering husband. She's a mother of 2 brilliant grown-up children and 1 grumpy grown-up cat, She's obsessed with her Little Red Street Library and her veggie patch in that order. In 2024, Tess became the director of Perth's new Festival of Fiction, and her favourite thing to do is to curl up with a good book and a cup of tea, ignore the book, forget the tea, and doom scroll social media instead. And she does share with us her love of celebrity and her love of a few reality TV shows in this interview. I had such a ball talking to Tess in this interview. She's always a pleasure to talk to. And I know that you are just going to love this interview. So, whether you are listening with your AirPods on, watching on the website, or whether you are watching on YouTube, sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation with the fabulous best-selling author, Tess Woods. Tess Woods, so good to have you back on the Rights for Women Convo couch. Welcome.
It's so nice to be here. Thanks for asking me, Pam.
Always love chatting. And I looked up our last chat test was in June 2019. Can you believe it?
Oh, wow.
It was when Love and Other Battles came out.
Yeah.
And we talked about light bulb moments. And I have to say, that podcast was I can't remember the figures now, but it got a lot of listens. People loved it.
Oh, isn't that
Um,
wonderful?
yeah. And in fact, it was a request that you come back on the podcast. So there you go.
Oh, that's lovely. Oh, thank you to, I'm sure, the one person.
No, there were a few.
Whoever you are.
So this is your first book in a little while. The Venice Hotel is the book that we're here to chat about,
Yeah.
which is absolutely amazing. Just been telling you off air how wonderful it is, how much I
Yes.
loved it. This is your first book in a while, and you're with a new publisher. Just can you tell us a little bit about what's happened in the meantime over that period in between having books out?
Yeah. Well, I wrote the 3 books in a row, my first 3 that were with HarperCollins. And I think just between my second book was Beautiful Messy Love, and then the third one, Love and Other Battles. So between 2017, 2019, I don't know what, I just went completely feral with deciding that I had to do everything that anyone does, like in the publishing industry. I was watching people do manuscript assessments, and I thought, oh, I need to do manuscript assessments. Let me offer that as a service. I was doing a really long newsletter. I did overseas retreats where I took people on a retreat and cooked and taught them and all of that. So I just did all of this stuff. And then I went to write Love and Other Battles, which was a really difficult book for me to write. It was very emotional. It had a teenager in it who was self-harming, and it had a Vietnam vet in it. And both of those characters were based on people I knew. So I was getting their stories from them. And as I wrote the book, I don't know, I just got a bit depressed and I was burnt out. And so by the time the book came out, which was 2019, I had been to Venice to research the Venice Hotel, and I emailed my publisher. It was about maybe a month before the Love and Other Battles came out. So it was mid 2019. And I said to her, I don't think I can write this Venice book. I feel completely burnt out. I'm exhausted. I'm not enjoying it anymore. If I wake up and I think I have to write and I feel depressed. And my daughter was about to do year 12, or going into 2020. And so I said to her, I think I want to have at least a year off. I want to have 2020 off. And so that's when I decided not to write at all. But then we all know what happened in 2020.
Yes.
And I'm a physio, and I'll tell you what businesses did not do well in 2020, and that's physiotherapy.
A little bit too much personal contact there, yeah, for those years.
Oh, it was just a disaster. So we had, my husband and I were running 2 clinics. We had to stand down all of our staff. So we had, I think, 8 staff. Like, we stood everyone down. We were running a clinic each. It was just a really exhausting, stressful couple of years. So I ended up not writing at all, not even thinking about writing until it was like mid 2022. So I actually had 2.5 years or so where I didn't write a word. And then I don't know, it's like a mental illness, Pam, writing. I couldn't not write this damn book. So even though I was living back to a pretty normal life, and I shut myself off a lot from the publishing industry. I stopped doing events, I stopped doing retreats, I stopped my newsletter, everything. I just shut everything off. And I was happy. It's not like I was sitting there thinking, geez, the thing missing from my life is doing 6 hours of homework every day. But I I felt like I was driven. I'd be going for a walk or in the shower or just anything. And I felt like this compulsion to tell this story of the Venice Hotel. So after that, even though I'd gone to research it the summer of 2017, 2018, I didn't actually start writing it until 5 years later. I think it was Christmas 23. I can't even remember now. I'm getting my years mixed up, but I finished writing it and I sent it to my agent who loved it, but didn't think it was quite going to hit the mark. So she said, look, I think it's good. It's like she believed in it from the start, but she wasn't quite thinking it had hit the mark and she didn't know why. So I did a rewrite, sent it back to her, and she said, I do like it a lot more, but I'm still not convinced that it's ready. And so she got this lady who is a professional like reader who I had never heard this was a thing,
Oh, wow.
but she's paid by the agent to give an opinion as a reader. And this is a lady who owns a bookstore and who was a marketing person at a small publishing house as well. So my agent thought she kind of really knows the industry. She's a seller and she's marketing. So she said, I feel like I've now spent too much time with this book to be objective about it. And also, I should say that my Love and Other Battles, that book completely tanked. So that book that I put so much into with my Vietnam vet, who I did lots of interviews with, and my niece and all of that, and it was my favorite book. To this day, it's still the book of my heart. I still think it's my best book, but it just did not sell at all. So I'd gone from having a bestseller in Love at First Flight to this complete turkey of a book in Love and Other Battles. So my agent was really, she had put a lot of pressure on herself to get the Venice Hotel to do well, because she thought if this book doesn't sell, your career, like it's over for you. People will forgive you one mistake, of a book, not a mistake, but, the book not hitting the mark, but they won't you do that twice. So that's why she wanted to get this professional reader in, because she just really wanted to make sure we got it right. Anyway, the professional reader read it. It was absolutely the most scathing report.
Oh, no. I thought you were going to say she loved it.
She hated it. Absolutely hated it. And it wasn't things that you could fix. It was like, I write in multiple point of view. She's like, this author doesn't know how to write in multiple point of view. Like, just scathing. I can't even tell you. I think she said something like, you can't throw a gondola in and call it Venice. She doesn't know how to do setting. And for me, I had bled setting into this story. I think now I feel vindicated because so many people have commented on the setting. But anyway,
one of the things I've picked out to ask you specifically about, because I think it's so strong in the book.
No, so I got this review back and it went for just like pages and pages of scorn. And I sent to my agent, this shows you how crazy I am. I sent my agent a 25-page response about why I was not going to go with this person's review. I sent it to my agent. I said, I'm so picturing your face right now when you open this document and see that because what I'd done is I was like a lawyer. She'd said there's no setting. And what I'd done is I'd cut and paste all the bits of my book where I'd put, this setting and going, what does she mean there's no setting? And she's saying, I don't know, show me the marketplace. And I'm like, here you go. And I, 2 pages of marketplace from the book to put in, that kind of stuff. So I just actually think this reader didn't really read the book properly. And so that I said to my agent, I said, I think she skimmed it. And I'm not going to, and I said to her, but what it has done for me is she's made me rethink my opening, because she clearly skimmed. She was asking questions. She's like, oh, why is Loretta single at 30? I had answered that question in the book. She was asking these things that were very obviously answered in the book. I said, but I need to know why she skimmed. And if she skimmed, my opening isn't strong enough.
Okay.
So it made me go back, even though I had this review that I was like, I am not listening to you. I went back and I worked really hard on my opening. And then I said to my agent, okay, I don't want to do this without you. So I'm not going to break up with you over this book. I'm not going to say, okay, unless you think it's good, I'm going to go elsewhere. I said, we're in this together. Either you sell it or we don't sell it. And she said, of course, I'm going to try and sell it. Like, yes, I will do this for you, even, you're being a crazy lunatic and not listening to any of the reviewers' advice. And so this was Christmas time. I handed it in at Christmas. And then I went, she was reading over it, and she was going to put it out to all the publishers. And then soon after that, I had someone slide into my DMs, and it was Ali Watts at Penguin. And
Ah.
she didn't know I'd written a book. She had no idea. She said,
Oh,
"Hey, Anthea Hodgson, who is her author, who's one
yeah.
of my, told me that you are a nice person." I think she said, "You're a cool chick." Anthea said, "You're a cool chick." And I was wondering if you just wanted to catch up sometime and have a coffee. So she was meaning it as like, "How are you? Like, let's get to know each other." And I said to her, "Yes, I would love to do a copy with you sometime. That would be great. But I've actually finished a manuscript. I've been told it's shit. Do you want to look at it? Do you want to look at my manuscript?"
There's a great pitch if I've ever heard one.
Shown it to this lady. She says it's terrible. My agent is about to wide pitch it because we want to try and go wide and see, because the last book hadn't done well with HarperCollins. So we maybe we'll take it somewhere else. Maybe HarperCollins will take it. We don't know. Like I was going to give it to obviously give it to Mary, my publisher at HarperCollins too. And she said, "Can I see it before anyone else sees it?" And I was like, "Okay." So it was actually me that sent it to her, not even my
Okay.
agent, to her. And here we are.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah. And she really made me feel better because she was like, "Setting up you. Like a multiple point of view. You." It was almost ultrasonic saying to my agents.
Did she suggest many changes, Ted?
She did. She suggested a very big change. That's why this book has really killed me to write. So this book was written from 5 women's point of view, the way I wrote
Oh,
it.
okay.
And for anyone who has read the book, Marina, who is Loretta's daughter, had a point of view as well. And I had this whole storyline with the hot priest in it.
Yeah.
Ali did not love the hot priest storyline.
Okay.
So she told me in the most beautiful Ali way, she gives the best shit sandwiches of anyone I know. She's like, "You're amazing. This book is going to be stellar. Get rid of the hot priest." It's so wonderful. That's how she does it. So I had to cut that. And I could see what she meant. She was like, "I just feel like it's too long. We need to spend more time with each character." And at the moment it's sitting at whatever it was sitting at 350 pages. And I still feel like I don't know all the characters well. So we got rid of one so that I could make it the same length, but every other character got longer chapters.
Okay.
Now that I've done it, I didn't want to do it. I went in kicking and screaming doing it. But now that I've done it, I know that she was absolutely right. That's what had to happen.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I
No, it
did
worked
put
well.
a priest in there. I didn't get rid of him.
No, he's
And
still in there.
yes, I know. She'd email me and go, "I see the hot priest. You have found a way to keep him in." And I'm like, "Yes, and that is where he will remain." I don't know. You need to at least let me keep him in there to give a wink to the reader every now and then from the hot priest.
Not only the hot priest, but George Clooney makes an appearance, which I was very impressed with.
Oh, George Clooney. Oh my God. Do you want that story? Do you want me to
Yes,
tell
I
you?
do. But before you give us the George Clooney story, and if you say you've met him, I'm going to absolutely
Oh,
scream.
no, I haven't met him. Oh, no, I never will now because I've insulted him. I'm sure.
Okay.
I'll-
There is a bit of an insult in there. But before we do that, for anybody who hasn't read the book, and I highly recommend you do because it's absolutely brilliant, just give us the blurb. Tell us what's it
Oh,
about.
what is it? Okay. Gosh, I'm out of practice, Pam. I haven't done this quite a while. It's about 4 women. Yep, we've just learned it was 5. Now it's 4. 4 women. And it's set over the 12 days of Christmas. So it's between Christmas and the Epiphany, which is a very big event in Venice in particular. And it's just set in a very small boutique hotel right in the heart of San Marco, which is the middle of Venice. And it's just about these 4 women. One of them runs the hotel. She's like the matriarch. Another one is an Australian food writer who goes to the hotel because the matriarch is a very famous cook. So she goes to the hotel to learn some of the recipes. There is an Italian girl a woman who has been living in Australia who goes home for her father's funeral and stays at the hotel. And there is an American grandmother, tourist from Arkansas. And so over the 12 days of Christmas, these four women's lives who start off, they don't know each other, but by the end, their lives have become very intertwined um, because they're all holding secrets that start to unravel.
Very
Okay.
good summary because there's a lot in there.
Oh, there is.
We're going to
That's
get on to
okay.
George in a minute, but I just want to ask
Sure.
first, why Venice?
I'm obsessed with Venice. I have been ever since I was a child. Like I really honestly think that as soon as I understood that you could travel, I wanted to go to Venice from when I was maybe 11, 12 years old. When I got my very first high school job, my money box said Venice trip on it because I'm old enough to have been paid in cash. So I used to put my money in there and it was for my Venice trip. But then because I was a world growing up in the 80s and 90s, my parents were like, "You're not going anywhere, girlfriend, until you're married. Like,
Right.
going to Venice on your own? Are you dreaming?" I thought I'd just be going with some school friends. So I got married very, very quickly after I finished high school.
So
I
you could
wanted
go
to
to
go to
Venice.
Venice. I wanted to go to Venice. So I married him fast. And then we started saving together because then we were going to do like a big Europe trip. So we saved, we were both physios, we took time off work, and we were honestly just about to book our flights when I discovered I was pregnant with my son. And we decided to put all that money on a house,
Yeah.
mostly, my parents were like, "What are you doing? Put the money on a house." So
Yeah.
we did that. And then I couldn't afford to go to Venice until I was 41 years old. So
Right.
then raising kids, I just don't have the money to travel overseas. So by the time we had the money to travel to Europe, I booked a direct flight into Venice so that the first Italian soil that I would put my feet on was Venetian soil. And I just remember our travel agent saying, "Oh, you're loco," because that's about the most expensive way that you can actually go to Europe is to fly into Venice. That she said you should be doing Rome or London or Paris or no one flies from Perth to San Marco Polo at the airport. So I did do that, and I went there. It was 2014 when I did that, and I, not a word of a lie, cried from when I stepped off the plane to when we walked into our hotel. I cried the whole way, going
Oh,
along the canals, walking up the alleys, going into San Marco Square, and I was overwhelmed because I had been building it up for like 30 years, what it was going to be like.
yeah.
So scared that it wouldn't live up to that, but it was even more than what I had imagined. The gondoliers were singing and it was just, oh my gosh, I was overwhelmed and just sobbing. And it was while I was there that I got an email from Jacinta de Marze saying that she wanted to sign me as an author. So I wasn't published back then. I didn't
Okay.
even
This
have
is
a
before you were
publishing
published.
before I
Yeah.
was published. I didn't have a publishing deal at all. And I got this agent who was this very powerful agent saying, "I want to sign you for Love at First Flight." And I said to my family, I made like a vow. I said, if I get a book deal and I sell a book, I'm going to come back and I'm going to research Venice and I'm going to set a book in Venice. So that's when I went back in 2017 was for research, to research this book. So it's been a very long time coming, this Venice
Yeah.
book,
I
because
bet.
I was so devastated when the lady said, "You haven't said it properly. There's no setting." I was like, "Are you kidding me, woman?"
Or maybe she was reading a different book because
Oh,
that's
I
what I
think
read.
she just skimmed. I honestly, I think she just skimmed it. God, if she's listening, I hope she's not one of your listeners. Like, hello, it's all is forgiven.
Let's stick with the setting for a bit. And in fact, I'm going to hold that George Clooney story off for the Substack supporters. So if anybody out
Oh,
there wants to
okay.
hear it, you have to sign up to Substack on for
Okay.
women. Um, while we're on Venice, because obviously it's hugely important to the story.
Yeah.
You'd been there once. You went back in 2017 purely with the intention of researching for this book.
Yeah.
Did you have in mind at that time, did you have any of the story in mind, or were you just soaking the setting, the
Yeah.
scenery, making notes? How did you go about absorbing that amazing place for your
Yeah.
book.
I I don't really plot my stories, but I knew that I wanted it to be a bit of a foodie story. So it was just really going to be a love story to Venice and me being able to play with food in a book. So I thought I want to have a food writer in this story.
Great.
So I went to Venice with the idea that I would research the food and talk to cooks and that kind of thing. And then just talk to people. I'm a very lazy researcher, so I want to do my research by getting other people to do it for me. Like I was going up to gelato shop owners and jewelers and yeah, cooks, and people who owned restaurants and the gondolieres, even like our Uber driver, e- everyone, the Uber driver from the airport, all those people. I was just talking to everyone. And the story that I thought I was gonna write, this very kind of, um, chick litty romance book is what I thought I was going there to research. It just wasn't the story that I ended up writing at all, because every single Venetian, there was not one Venetian that I met that didn't mention climate.
Mm,
So all of them, it's all they cared about. And I was like, I'm big noting myself, I'm this Australian author, I'm writing my next book about Venice. And the first thing they said is, are you going to put in the book that we don't want tourists that come
uh,
in today? We want our tourists to actually visit Venice properly and put money back into the city, not just because 75% of tourists only spend a few hours in Venice. So
right.
they do is just stomp on those centuries old pavers and leave. They don't actually bring any money into the city, or they buy cheap souvenirs from the Chinese knockoff shops along the Esplanade. So they were like, are you going to say that we're sinking? Are you going to tell the world in your book that we need climate action?
Mm,
And so I came home and had to rethink what I wanted to do. And so it ended up just being a lot of conversations that I didn't know I was going to have, that I was having with people, talking about, like our driver said to us, he said, I don't live in Venice anymore. I can't afford to live in Venice anymore. I've had to move. And now they charge me double to get on the train to come to Venice to work. And I have to pay a tax to work here. He goes, and I'm Venetian. You know, so the tourists come and enjoy it, but the actual Venetians have all been moved off their ancestral land and they're living somewhere else and they're commuting in and getting punished. So all of that wasn't what I was planning to say in the story. So it ended up being a little bit darker, I guess, than what I was planning at the start. But in the end, I think it's a more honest book about Venice now.
I've been to Venice. Um, one of those people back in the day when I was traveling when I was young that went in for a day, and came
Yeah,
out again.
yeah,
Um, and I've read obviously things about it sinking and stuff, but the level of detail you have in here, Tess, around all that is just so. It was really enlightening. Like it was a great
right.
story, and I love the characters and everything. But I think that thread that you've got going through there, well, it's not even a thread; it's like the whole backdrop
Yeah,
with the exhibition. For the listeners, there's an exhibition taking place which is highlighting the really precarious environmental situation happening in Venice, and there's all these different actions exhibits going on. And the way you bring those into the story, Tess, and keep returning to them, I just love that whole thread going through there. I thought you did that so brilliantly, and it makes it really real.
yeah,
And like I actually felt like this I was in Venice while I was reading it, and it made it so real and so, like you say, so honest.
yeah,
I thought it was such an important part of the story. Yes, okay, you could never have gone to Venice and you could have looked at Google Earth or whatever and done a little bit of reading and research, but the level of detail that you've got in here really showed me that you knew exactly what you were talking about.
yeah. And I think now it is more than like because I came home and I was like, oh, I wanted this to be a love letter to Venice. And now I actually think more than ever, it is a love letter to,
Mm,
I
mm.
feel like I've done for the Venetians what I told them I would do when I was there, what I promised them I would do. I feel like I've delivered on that now.
Yeah. I just wanted to read a little bit um, for listeners, just so they could get a little bit of an idea. Um, this is Sophie. So the other thing that I love, Tess, about, and we're going to get on to talking about point of view in a minute, but is that because The 4 point of view characters all have different experiences of Venice. So Sophie and Gail are coming. Sophie's coming for work. Gail's there as a tourist, but Eleanor and Loretta have lived and grown up in Venice, so it's part of their blood. You know? So I love the way that you filter that setting through each character, and we get a real sense of what the place means to them. Seeing it through their eyes. I thought you did such a great job of that. And this
Mhm.
is Sophie, who is the food writer, who is also helping out at the hotel because they've had a bit of a crisis and she's helping. So, okay. On the way back to Il Core from the markets, Sophie and Rocco walk across the Rialto Bridge. It's an overcast morning and the canal is peaceful in the semi darkness. The streetlights are still on, their yellow reflections shimmering on the water. Can I stop to get a picture of the canal? It's stunning in this light. Sophie leans on the railing. I love how the waves lap right up against the buildings. You don't see that anywhere else in the world. This is the magic of Venice, Rocco says, the balance between water and stone. I love that. I'm going to quote you in my feature. He laughs. Okay, but also right that water and stone is the magic and the disaster of Venice. He leans on the railing next to her. The big ships that come through the canal make the waves too big. Every day the water washes away more of the clay. The buildings are eroding. They will crumble soon. Sophie shakes her head. I don't understand how the ships are still allowed to come through. Come, let me show you something, but we have to walk back the other way. They turn back in the direction of the markets, Rocco dragging the cart full of food behind him. On the other side of the canal, he squats down and rubs the ground with his fingers. See this? He looks up at her. This is concrete. When the ancient stones erode, instead of replacing them with new stones, the government fixes the cracks with concrete. He stands up and kicks the concrete with the tip of his shoe. Centuries of beauty destroyed like this, piece by piece.
Yeah, that was all real too. That is all stuff that happened while I was there. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. But I love the way that you just make it part of the story,
Yeah.
and it doesn't feel like an info dump or, oh, I've got to make sure the reader knows this. We just get it through the character's perspective and, because it's so important to the Venetians and he's explaining it to someone that doesn't live there, it works really well.
Yeah, because I felt that way about the water and stone. I was like, that was what Sophie said is what I said. I was like, where can you go in the world where the water is like on the building? It's never like that. There's always like a footpath or there's something that
Mm,
separates the water and the building. And so I just loved just going through the back canals and you see that water coming up on the stone. It's just magic.
mm.
It's also that's what's killing them as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, the
So
irony. Yeah.
yeah, it really is. An article for The Age, I think, and that's what they called it, Water and Stone. They called the article. I wrote like a nonfiction piece for The
Oh,
Age,
great.
meaning tourism in Venice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to track that down. I'd like to read that. With your characters, Tess, so we've got the 4 point of view characters, Loretta,
Mhm.
Eleanor, Gail, and Sophie. You
Yeah.
said that you started with this idea of a food writer.
Yeah.
How did you then develop this kind of cast of characters? Marina obviously was also a character, but she's gone off that she's still in
Yeah.
there. She's not a
Yes.
point of view character.
Yes.
So as a kind of pantser, how did you come to
Yes.
have these 4 characters being the storytellers?
Sophie really, Sophie is a lot of me. There's a lot of myself in Sophie. So I didn't have to look very far for her. Obsessed with food and obsessed with Venice. And so I feel like she is probably more me than any character I've ever written before. Um, and then Loretta, the Italian matriarch who owns the hotel. When I went back to research Venice, we went down to Bologna, which is not that far from
Mm.
Venice. Walking one night, we were just walking, and I don't know, have you been to Bologna, Pam, before?
I don't think so. I might have driven through it, but I don't think we stopped there.
Yeah. It's not as touristy as some other places in Italy, especially if you stay like not really in the CBD area. So because we were back a little bit in the suburban kind of Bologna, um, it wasn't touristy at all. So the restaurants were amazing because they're cooking for the local. Anyway, we were walking down a back street one night just trying to find somewhere to eat. And there was this literal hole in the wall restaurant that we went into. And as soon as we walked in, I'd been manhandled by the old nonna in there and like, sat down. We're like, okay, guess we're eating here. Oh, and my husband asked for a menu and she goes, "What menu? You eat what I tell you to eat." So he brings out this food. She doesn't ask us allergies, whatever. She did not care. She's like, "You're eating what I'm going to put in front of you." And the food was incredible. And I just remember my husband was like wanting to lick the plate when we finished. And she had her parents in and her children in there. So it was these three generations in there.
Mm,
And she was yelling at her parents. She was calling her husband an idiot. She was yelling at the kids. It was just this atmosphere of chaos. Right? And I just thought, that's my person. That's who I want to base it on. And so I wish I knew who she was or who the restaurant was. But at the time, we just had dinner and then we went home. And I would never be able to even tell you which restaurant it
yeah.
is. But it was based on her, so not actually a kind of cheated and put in a bolognese on the lady. And then Gail came because I am obsessed with the Duggar family from 19 Kids and Counting. Do you
Oh,
know
yes.
these like just lunatic, um, fundamentalist Christian, these real make America great again, like nutbags. And I have watched that show and watched those kids grow up like they're my own. Do not ask me why, but I'm obsessed with them. So I'm so invested in all 19 children and who they've now had children with. I just love these kids. I don't know why, because they represent everything I hate in the world, but here I am, so I can't explain it. So it was me kind of looking into that culture, like that Make America Great Again culture
Yeah.
from the real fundamentalist Christianity point of view. That I think a lot of mainstream Australia, we look at them and go, "Oh my God, you guys you're bloody idiots."
Yeah.
We really, don't we? Because I've been following this family for so long, I don't feel like that about them. So I wanted to show the nuances that there's people behind this movement
Yeah.
that actually probably be good people who come across and in this way, and we don't agree with their beliefs, but maybe if we saw them from another point of view. So that's how Gail came, and
Mm.
she ended up being she's my favorite character.
She's
So
so good. She's
I
so
loved her.
yeah. I've actually
Um,
got
yeah.
Tess, while you're there, we'll get on to Eleanor quickly in a minute. But I've just got a little bit of a excerpt here to read, just so people get a bit of a vibe for the voice. Because you did such a great job of differentiating the voices too. Um, so this is Mike, her husband, Gail's husband, who is super redneck. Mike shakes his head. We're having a nice dinner here, hun. Why'd you have to go and ruin it with this talk of hospitals and sinning? To me, it's simple. Marriage is the union by which to honour God through procreation. And that marriage of Noah's sure as heck ain't a God honouring one. You don't need to agree with him, Mrs. Gale. You just need to accept him. He's asking us to accept too much. He's our child, Mike. There shouldn't be limits to what we can accept when it comes to our children. He sighs a big sigh and rolls his eyes. What do you want from me? Go on, spit it out. What is it you actually want me to do? Gail feels herself shrink in confidence, but she perseveres. I want you to call him and apologize. Say you're sorry for the way you reacted. His nostrils flare. Now hang on just a minute. Dogs would have to mow the lawns and cats would have to hang out the washing before I apologize to that boy. Gail gulps down her nerves and plows on. Hun, I've never asked you to do anything you didn't want to do now, have I? For every one of our 55 years of marriage, I've respected your authority and I've done it gladly. Her voice wobbles and she twists the napkin around her finger. But this is our son. I can't have another Christmas without my boy. Hope I'm not giving away too much in the plot there.
Yeah, no.
But her, like you say, like Gail, when I first started reading these two characters, I thought, oh God, what pains in the ass. No,
Yeah, yes, yeah.
but you do such a lovely job with Gail because we do get to see under that veneer and just her own doubts about some of their beliefs and things. She's just so
Yeah,
human.
yeah, I do love her. She is what I like to think is going on behind the scenes of some of that
Yeah.
movement. I'm sure I'm wrong, and it's probably not. But like to think that there are people in that movement who are thinking this can't be right.
Mm. Yeah, and how about Eleanor? How did you kind of
So,
appear to you?
Ellen really, um, I don't want to spoil things, but I
Yeah.
wanted to write about her situation. I won't say exactly
Mm,
what it is. I needed an avenue to talk about an issue and that I really wanted to talk about. And so I had to create a character for that. So really for me, she was just a vehicle to be able to talk about that
mm,
really.
mm. We don't wanna give away spoilers. It's a really important part of the story, and it's crucial in bringing all the characters together too, her story.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
when you're writing, your individual characters, because we do switch from point of view, Tess, do you is that how you write it? Like, how it kind of appears in the book? I know obviously revisions and we move things
Yes.
around, but do you do it chronologically like that,
Yes.
moving from character to character? And if you do, how do you go about getting into the headspace of each character when you're writing that section?
I often go back and read the last few pages of the last chapter of that character because I'm a very slow writer. So it would take me like a week to write a chapter, really. So then it's been like when I've gone back to that character, it's been like a month since I
Mm.
wrote them. So I've forgotten their voice really in my head. So then I go back and read what I wrote about them last time and go, that's right.
Yeah, yeah. And do
Annoying
you find
person.
yourself thinking about your characters when you're not writing? Like when you're in that drafting process, you
All
kind
the
of in
time.
bed at night. Yeah.
Yep, I'm in that process now, and I just, before doing this with you this morning, I was out for a walk, and I was just saying to my head, like, "Just stop, stop, look at the sky, listen to the birds. We don't need." I'm in Cairo right now. That's where my story's at, and I'm like, "We don't need to be in Cairo. We're in Perth. Enjoy." But I just find it is like a compulsion. I think that only writers or creatives perhaps can understand.
Yes, I can relate to that. The voices in the head thing. It's a bit scary.
Mm.
We are
It
going to
is.
go on in a minute, Tess, to talk just a little bit more about writing process and things for the Substack supporters. But just before we do flip over for the to the Substack chat, you are working on another book now, and it is set in Egypt. Obviously, you don't want details because you're only early in the process. But how are you finding that?
Really challenging. I am at the stage of drafting where I'm looking at my bank account and wondering if I can afford to pay back the advance. So that's where we're at right now. I have sent the first 35,000 words to my publisher, and I did send it with the caveat of, I'm pretty sure this is shit. And she came back and said that she absolutely loves it.
Oh,
And
yay!
yeah, because I said, I've been telling my husband that, this is the shit book to back up the Venice book. And she said, please tell your husband that I think it's better than Venice. So I was so thrilled to have her say that because I'm really just in that horrible, just, I feel like, how did I ever get a contract? That's the stage I'm at. And I think I'm being extra hard on myself because it's going home for me and I'm
Yeah.
representing people. And I feel like I know all my cousins are gonna read it. There's all of that playing in my head. It's set in a bridal shop. It's called the Cairo Bridal Shop. Very creative
Great.
titling there that I'm doing. It's set in a bridal shop because my nana, who died during COVID, was a bridal dressmaker.
Oh,
So
what a lovely
this
tribute
is
to
my
her.
yes, it's my tribute to my nana. And then every bride, it's set in 6 parts. Every bride that comes into the shop to have a dress made is the retelling of one of the 6 pharaoh queens. So it's bringing the pharaohs to
Oh, I love that.
contemporary world, and it's about 3 sisters. So each of those sisters has her issues going on. So for me, this book is about the Cairo Bridal Sisters. I want to show everyone my love for my country and
Mm,
just why I'm so proud to be Egyptian and the warmth and hospitality and the culture and the pyramids and all of that. But also, the Egyptian government needs a good talking to. So, and women's rights in the Middle East, it's
mm.
an oxymoron. So, yeah, I have the 3 sisters where with no autonomy over their bodies, and like one of them one of them is gay. You're not allowed to be gay
Mhm.
in Egypt. So
Mm.
what happens when you're gay? One of them is she's a journalist, and you can't be critical of the government as a
Right.
journalist. What happens to a journalist who is? So I really just wanted to show the human rights side. So I think for Venice, my driving force, I guess, was climate. And
Yeah.
now with Egypt, it's human rights, which has been my passion. I joined Amnesty International in 1986. So
Yeah.
has been my passion for the bulk of my life has been human rights. Um, and I think anyone who follows me on Instagram has seen me being very vocal about that since the war started in Palestine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I guess I'm trying to balance these lovely like wedding dresses and romance and the pharaohs with the government. That's disaster. So we'll see how that goes. So
Well,
far, I feel like I'm doing it terribly.
you always feel like that in the draft stage, I think, when you really
Oh,
and it's a big story, like,
yeah,
so
sorry, I feel.
understand. You did a brilliant job in Venice Hotel. You'll do another brilliant job with this test, I'm sure.
Oh, thank you, darling.
Thank you
Thank
so much. Don't go away though. We are going to talk a little bit further for our Substackers, and it's just been such a joy and a pleasure as always to talk to you. And as I said, love the Venice Hotel. Can't wait for the next
you.
one. Thank you so much, too.